Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. Got my boy Jordan Bowman in the back. He'll be joining us momentarily. But before we get into the show tonight, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Help us grow this channel. This is, as always, a live video, so hit that like button. It helps us out. That's a good way of supporting the channel. Also, the Mark Rogers channel has a store you guys can go check out. And last but not least, as always, there is a super feature here on the channel that is turned on. You guys can always support the show in that way, and it is much appreciated by myself and Jordan Bowman as well. We'll get into the chat section a little bit later into the show. But without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, fan favorite, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, man?
Trying to think of the word for it. You know, today it's been something for sure.
Yeah.
So honestly, I'm just a little shell shocked, a little bit. I don't want to say shell shocked because that's probably not the right word, because I think some of the events that happened today were somewhat expected. But you know, just I don't know. It's just been all at once. I think that was probably the biggest thing. So but other than that, I'm doing good. This is going to be a pretty interesting show, pretty loaded, a lot of stuff to get into. And I'm still just trying to process, the game in Columbia, last Saturday. But now we have a ton of stuff to talk about, big picture stuff, roster stuff, coaching staff stuff. It's going to be a really interesting episode, that's for sure.
Yeah, man, look, there's a ton of stuff to get into tonight. We got a loaded show for you guys tonight. I hope you guys are buckled in and ready to go. I mean, we're going to go everything from the Clemson, South Carolina, rewind and talk about the game. We're going to talk about, what we saw in the game and, how that kind of played out. We're going to talk about the transfer portal. We're going to talk about coaches getting fired. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff when it comes to Clemson football, offers in the transfer portal coming into Clemson. But, it's been a wild ride if you're a Clemson fan coming out of the South Carolina game. It's just been an absolute crazy week, and I can't express enough how much of a roller coaster ride it's been since Clemson defeated South Carolina and William Bryce Stadium at 7:30. We everything that was wrong in the state of South Carolina has now been righted by the Clemson Tigers, especially if you're a Clemson Tiger fan. So just talk to me a little bit about what the win has meant to the Clemson Tigers and how nice it was to see Clemson come out on top this past Saturday against the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Yeah, man. I think since I've had several days since the post game show to kind of process it. I think it's a big win. It's huge. For the program needed that win. From a recruiting standpoint, all of that. I mean, there's so many different angles that you could go into. So it really was it was nice to get that win. Was not pretty. We know, Clemson was going into it with some deficiencies, I guess, in the lineup. And, we already knew that this team was a struggling offense, and there were a lot of things that happened during the week and leading up to it that, definitely contributed to some of the performance on Saturday. But, big picture wise, it's a big win. Just, from a bragging rights standpoint as well. Keeping your rival out of a bowl game and snatching sort of the momentum that they seem to have after those two top 10 wins at the end of the year last year. And for Clemson, it's a big deal because you close the regular season out on a 4-game winning streak after starting 4-4. That matters. That's teams build momentum, and a lot of times, the feeling you get about the program is sort of determined by how the team closes the year and not so much how they start in a lot of ways. So I think it was a big win for that reason as well. And man, I don't know what to say. Clemson, that they own that stadium. I mean, they've won more games in Williams-Brice than South Carolina has won total wins in the rivalry. Like that's a pretty crazy I know. I mean, Clemson, this game was played solely in Columbia up until 1960, so that definitely helps. But, honestly, that's even more impressive that you own the commanding lead in the series that you do.
Yeah.
But I think South Carolina has beaten Clemson at home 5 times since 1980.
Yep.
That's pretty crazy. And 3 of those times were during the 5-game winning streak that they went on from 09 to 13. So, I mean,
look, I want to, as a Clemson fan, I want to enjoy this win a little bit, which is what we're going to do for the first part of this show tonight. Before we get into, the coaching changes and the portal players leaving and the portal players that have been offered by Clemson and all of that stuff that we will get into tonight. I just want to enjoy this win for a little bit as a Clemson Tiger fan, as a college football fan. And first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to the comment section. We got a ton of people in here right now. We got 36 people in the live chat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Big Mick is in the chat. Steel Gamble, Timmy B, Jackson Johnson, John Serene is in here. Droid is in here. Not Me is in here. K Klubnik Enthusiast is in here. Jonathan Benton is in here. Drew G. Jeremiah Allen. Let's see. Who else? I hope I'm not missing anyone. I hope I'm not missing anybody in the chat, but thank you guys so much for getting into the chat, getting into the comment section. We really do appreciate it. And we really want to start the show off tonight before we get into all the drama that has been Clemson football since the regular season ended this past Saturday, and really enjoy this South Carolina loss, Jordan. And
you win, right?
The South Carolina loss on their end, the win on Clemson's end.
I was okay. I was
right?
Like, oh man,
I'm sorry.
Am I in an alternate universe? Did I go back in time to 2022? Like what happened?
I should have stated that a little bit differently, but this South Carolina game was truly a defensive game and an offensive struggle. That's as plainly stated as it could possibly be. Jonathan Weiss, I mean, that dude came in clutch. As much as we have bagged on him this season because he's been 50% or below 50% on his field goal kicks for the season, he came in clutch with 3 kicks that made him, the biggest kicks of his career. Both, with the pressure that he was on to make those kicks, and then also with the length of those kicks. And K Klubnik came in with 52 yards rushing. Maffa came in with 89 yards rushing. Shipley came in with 80 yards rushing. It was truly a team win when it came to the rivalry game. Passing was a bit of a struggle for this team with the South Carolina win. There was a lot of drops by the wide receivers. There was some bad errant passes by K Klubnik as the quarterback. But at the end of the day, it was a great defensive performance by the Clemson Tigers, both on the passing and the rushing performance. It was truly gritty. The turnover margin was absolutely amazing for the Tigers. They have now 11 takeaways in the past 4 games on defense, which is truly how they turned the season around. The defense truly started taking the ball away and creating scenarios for the offense where they could truly score, and that's really the difference. And that's how the season really got turned around. It was mainly on the defensive side of the ball. So, just all those things that I just covered, just what your thoughts on the game, how it played out. It wasn't like I think most of us thought it would be. I did think the defense would be the key to winning this game. But, with that said, I also didn't think the offense would play, as poorly as they did, or that it would look as hard as it did for the offense to gain yards. But it was truly difficult for the Clemson Tiger offense to gain yards in this game. What was kind of the reasons for that in this game?
Yeah, I think it comes down to I think some of it goes to, I mean, you have to give credit to South Carolina. They came in with a good game plan. It was something they had been doing the previous couple of weeks. They had made some schematic changes defensively. They were more of an odd front defense. and it helped their back end a ton. They did a good job of kind of protecting their defensive backs and kind of putting them in better situations than they had been earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So I think you have to give them credit. They won some battles up front. And they did a good job of just keeping everything in front of them. I think that was kind of the game plan, and I think they were content to let Clemson maybe get 4 yards on rushing plays, but Clemson never really broke off a ton of big ones. I think the longest run on the night was 14. I think it was probably Will Shipley. But Clemson was able to get just enough and get first downs and create favorable second and third downs, and it allowed them to flip the field position, and they were doing just enough to get into field goal range at times. It was just an ugly game, and I think another part of it was Dabo was content, and he basically said it during after the game. He said, I haven't said no to passing this many times in a game, and I think he felt like this team is not equipped. This offense is not equipped to run fully what we want to do without messing up, turning the ball over. Our defense has control of this game, and so I think I think Clemson kind of just was content to play conservative, play the field position, time of possession game, which they did really well, and they've done pretty well the past few weeks. And that was enough because South Carolina had nothing to offer offensively after their lone touchdown drive, which was aided by some questionable calls, roughing the passer, and then on that Philly special that they scored on. It was sort of a Philly special that there was a pretty massive hold up the middle. But beyond that, it was nothing. I think South Carolina took one snap in Clemson territory the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, and
So
look,
that's pretty crazy.
I think I've heard a lot of Clemson fans talk about Dabo Swinney's comments in the post game presser, and I watched his post game presser where he talked about not saying no as much as he had until this game, and a lot of people in the Clemson fan base that has been clamoring that Dabo Swinney is too involved in this offense took shot at him and the Clemson program and the Clemson offense as a whole to say he needs to get out of the Clemson offense and that sort of thing because he was trying to play more conservative game and saying no to passing. He didn't want to put the defense in a terrible position if Cade Klubnik was to make a poor decision with the ball in his hands, which I do understand. But talk to me a little bit about Clemson fans and their kind of outrage a little bit, I guess, of Dabo Swinney's comments on saying no to kind of the passing game and stuff like that in the South Carolina game with the kind of game that was playing out on the field.
Yeah, it's easy to be upset. Obviously you wish that you had capitalized more offensively and and taken more shots, because obviously just a 16-7 score is not the most satisfying of wins that you could have had. And especially after the defense created 2 turnovers in the first 3 South Carolina offensive snaps, you kind of felt like you were in better position to score more points in this game. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think Dabo kind of knew where his team was at, and I think that's something that we have to understand is in this, heading into the game, he knew where this team was mentally and where, not just mentally but physically, with a lot of guys not practicing, a lot of guys had the flu. I think he just felt like I don't think this team is prepared to do what we want to do offensively right now, and I think it would be better off for us to just play it close to the vest and allow our defense to control the game. And I know that that's frustrating and for Clemson fans, but seeing what we've seen from this team all year, I really don't think that's the worst decision ever. Just knowing how this team has been able to, uh, you know, make back-breaking mistakes when they've tried to do things. And I think, just playing it conservative and close to the vest was probably the right strategy, because even doing that, you threw an interception in the red zone.
Yeah.
So they weren't technically in the red zone, but they were approaching that. Right. And so if you tried to press any more, who knows what would have happened. And you almost threw another interception too.
You should have thrown another interception.
Yeah, that was fortunately dropped. So you got to take the gifts and just play to the strengths of your team. And the offense I think at that point, Dabo was, pretty resigned to the fact that this offense was not a strength and not something that could be relied on Saturday night. So it's frustrating as a fan to watch. It was not pretty at all. But I think we might be talking about a different result if they had tried to play a little bit more aggressive. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, no, and I think there's a lot of good points that you made, Jordan, and I think that there possibly could have been a different game on Saturday if Clemson would have played more aggressively as an offense. Cade Klubnik has not proved to be, this season to keep the ball out of harm's way very much. He's a guy that is still growing as a quarterback. He's got a lot of things to work out in the offseason. He's got to get better as a quarterback. He's not where Clemson fans or Clemson coaches, I think, for that matter, thought he would be at this point in time in his career. But at the end of the day, he's still the guy for Clemson football. And, I think that Dabo Swinney and the rest of the coaching staff really played the game to win. And that's all you could hope for. Myself, I did not see a 16-7 type of game happening. I did not see that being the final score for the Clemson-Carolina game. However, I'm extremely happy that Clemson won the game. Everything that was wrong in the state of South Carolina has now been righted for 365 days until we play this game next season. And I couldn't be more excited about being on top of the state once again, righting all the wrongs. It's a great time to be a Clemson Tiger. And I love beating the Gamecocks, especially on their home field. It was a great feeling. It was a great feeling.
Absolutely, and just planting the flag on the logo. That was Jeremiah Trotter, who we'll talk about. That was nice to it was a nice little send off for him.
Absolutely.
And they did it. I know some people got upset about that, but they did it last year. So that's part of the rivalry, man. You got to return the favor. So I thought that was pretty cool. And honestly, if any team deserves to plant their flag on the opposing team's stadium, it is Clemson, because of how often Clemson has beaten South Carolina in Columbia over the years. So, hey, glad to have the state back. It wasn't as pretty as we had hoped, and I would love to be sitting here talking about a Clemson blowout victory, but they did enough. They did enough to win, and they made their mistakes. South Carolina made their mistake. It was not a pretty football game. Neither team looked, really played their best game. But that's part of the rivalry, man. It's not always going to be pretty. And that team was, that team has coaches too. That team has players too, and they were trying to, it was senior day for them. They're trying to fight for bowl eligibility. So they had a lot of reasons to come out and play hard, and you did enough to win the game. So I mean, at the end of the day, after the angst and frustration from last year, it's just nice to have that trophy back where it belongs.
Yeah, it really is, man. And I just want to caution all Clemson fans to enjoy this victory just a little bit. No one in the Clemson fan base is saying that all the problems were fixed based off of this 4-game win streak that Clemson went on to end the season. It could end up being 5-game winning streak if they can win the bowl game. We don't know where the bowl is going to be. We don't know who we're going to play. That'll be decided at a later date, but enjoy the victory while you can, because it is so important to win the state. And Clemson did that on Saturday night. And, I just want to, just implore Clemson fans to just enjoy it a little bit. We can talk about transfer portal. We can talk about coaches getting fired. We can talk about, the 2024 season coming up and all that stuff. But we got plenty of time to talk about that. Just enjoy the victory, revel in it a little bit, talk a little bit of trash to your South Carolina fans that you work with, that you live with, family members, all of that kind of stuff. Enjoy it a little bit, but at the same time, we can have some conversation about where Clemson goes from this point forward.
Absolutely. And I certainly will. I have plenty of Gamecock people, both in my personal life, family life, social life, that I got to rub it in, during this week. So it was pretty fun. So
it's always fun to win the rivalry. It's always good to win the rivalry. That's why it hurt so much last season. So Clemson fans, think back to last season when we lost that game by 1 point and how much that game hurt. It's always a good thing. But we're going to transition into some of the things happening in the Clemson program since Saturday. And it has been a ton of things that have happened in the Clemson program since Saturday, Jordan. And we'll start first and foremost with the coaching changes just out this week. A couple
today.
of since today, a couple Clemson coaches have been let go. They will not be returning for the 2024 season. I'll start first and foremost with Lemansky Hall. He has been with the Clemson coaching staff since the 2018 season. He spent about 3 years as a defensive analyst for the Tigers. If you guys know Lemansky Hall, he was a player for the Alabama Crimson Tide when Dabo Swinney was a player for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yep.
He's got long ties to Dabo Swinney. They have a long-standing relationship. And, he's been the defensive coach since 2018. He got the on-field coaching position in 2018. He has held that position until this season as the defensive end coach. And some Clemson fans and some people that follow the Clemson coaching or the Clemson team, I guess closely, would say that some of the play has dropped off significantly at defensive end since Lemansky Hall has been coach. And Dabo Swinney came out with a statement today saying that the gist of it was him and Lemansky Hall had a meeting earlier this week. They both came to a mutual understanding that he should move on and exercise his ability to have other opportunities in the coaching realm when it comes to college football, but he will not be returning for the 2024 season. So what are your thoughts? Are you surprised by Lemansky Hall being fired? Are you surprised by Dabo Swinney's timing of this before the bowl game is even announced?
Yeah. I think this was the time to do it. Clemson's not playing for anything particularly meaningful. I mean, I know, I value bowl games and all that, but you're not playing in a New Year's Six bowl. You don't have a conference championship game this Saturday. So I don't think there's a reason to go through a full month of bowl prep with a staff that you don't plan to, or with staff members that you don't plan to keep around. Mm-hmm. And with everything, with the transfer portal and all of that going around, it just, I think it made sense now to get ahead of it and get out ahead of it. With regards to Coach Hall, I won't say whether this is like something that I won't speculate on too many of the reasons, But I will, say that, my observations over the years since he's been defensive ends coach has been that the play at defensive end has been spotty. I think not just, not just like production, but development. I feel like has kind of been up and down and inconsistent. Clemson has had some pretty talented players at defensive end since he's been here, and not all of them have quite panned out, and not all of them I don't think have reached their full potential. I think of a guy like Miles Murphy, who was a first round pick in last year's draft, and he was a player that was he shined really early in his career as a freshman. Worked his way into a major start. He was basically a starter in 2020, and it just seemed like he never really took that next step as a player. I thought he was really good in 2021, and then I felt like he took a step back his last year. But he was a guy that was viewed as having all the potential in the world and one of the most naturally gifted defensive ends that Dabo has had. But it just never felt like he took that next step into being a truly dominant pass rusher. He was a good run defender, but he never really took that next step as a pass rusher. And I think just the play overall at defensive end, I think running the ball and setting the edge has been kind of an issue. I thought that was one of the weaknesses of this, as good as this Clemson defense has been this year. A lot of those, outside, stretch runs where it's on the defensive end to kind of set the edge and kind of prevent those running lanes. Felt like Clemson got gashed at times. And that's kind of been a consistent issue. That was an issue last year. And at times in the year before that. And I really think that's kind of one of I don't want to speculate on these reasons, but those are just some of the things I've observed. And I felt like the recruiting has been kind of shaky as well. So I think this probably was a move that needed to happen just based off of what I've seen. I think from everything that I've heard about Coach Hall is he's a great human being. He's a really awesome person to be around. And, I feel like this was something that, there didn't really seem to be much progression here. I mean, it was, TJ Parker came in and was really, really great, but you kind of want to make sure you're in a position to give him the opportunity to progress and reach his full potential. And we just haven't seen that over the years. I didn't even mention, guys like Cade Denhoff and Zaire Patterson get, both two pretty highly rated, two really highly rated recruits in their class that just never really have never really popped and shown that they've taken that next step. And why I think the defensive end position with Xavier Thomas and Justin Mascall moving on is kind of in trouble because you really only have one guy that you can rely on right now. And I think that's a problem as well. So it was one of those things that, I think Coach Hall is he's a great, I don't want to say he's a great human being. And he's been a great ambassador for Clemson. I know that he and Dabo are really, really close. So this was probably a tough decision for Dabo, but it's probably something that probably needed to happen because I just feel like the development and play on the field has not been up to par to how Clemson used to have. You think back to the the Vic Beasleys and Kevin Dodds and Cleveland Farrells of the world, Shaq Lawson. You had this really great run, in the early 2010s, early to mid 2010s of really, really good pass rushers, and you just haven't really had that since Cleveland Farrell graduated. So I think this was probably something, and I think Clemson could use something like that in the future because I think that's something this defense has missed. I don't think we haven't had a player hit 10 sacks since Cleveland Farrell. I don't think
so.
In 2018.
you know, to be completely honest, and I want to preface all of our statements tonight about the coaching changes. I do not revel in any sort of, you know, people losing their job. I'm not a person that is going to celebrate necessarily someone losing their job. It's never something that you want to see. But obviously, in this situation with these couple coaches that we're going to talk about tonight, it was necessary. And you know it's necessary by the fact that Dabo Sweeney did it, and these guys were super close to Dabo Sweeney. These guys had relationships with Dabo Sweeney. So if he did not truly feel that this was the best thing for the Clemson program, it would not have happened. So we can speak to it being best for the program, along with not being happy because somebody is out of a job. And I know they're college football coaches and they're well compensated and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be a person that gets on here and persecutes coaches and just revels in their loss of a job. Okay. But at the end of the day, I think that the defensive line position at Clemson football since 2018, basically since Lemansky Hall has taken over, has taken a sharp decline in Clemson football. And it was truly, for a long time, a destination type spot in college football. I mean, look, we had some of the best defensive ends in college football for quite a few years there, and the guys that have come in, although they have been highly rated, I don't feel like they've been developed properly. I don't feel like that Lemansky Hall has necessarily gotten the best out of those guys, and I think for all of those reasons, Dabo Sweeney had to part ways with them. And I'm sure it wasn't easy. I mean, he's known Lemansky Hall since 1989, since he was at they were teammates on Alabama together, so they have a long-standing relationship. I commend Dabo Sweeney for making the decision. I commend Dabo Sweeney for doing the right thing for the Clemson program, and I truly hope he goes out there and hires the best defensive end coach that he possibly can, or maybe Nick Eason just takes over the entire defensive line. I could see that happening as well. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the Clemson defensive line, but I think Nick Eason is definitely capable of being a coach for the entire defensive line. I don't think it's quite necessary to have a defensive tackle and a defensive end coach separately. I think Nick Eason could absolutely do the job. He's a coach that players want to play for. He gets the most out of his players. You've seen how the defensive tackles have performed, so I think it was absolutely necessary for Clemson to make a change on several fronts of their coaching staff, and it started with Lemansky Hall. Unfortunately for him, he just didn't get the job done. And at the end of the day, college football is all about performance. It's all about what you produce on the field. And he did not produce the most elite defensive lineman, regardless of talent. So for those reasons, Dabo Sweeney let him go. I wish him the best. I hope he has a great career. I hope that he lands on his feet. But he wasn't for the Clemson Tigers. So we got to move on. We got to hire a new defensive line coach, or Nick Eason has to take over the entire defensive line. We'll see what happens.
Drew G with the $2. Thank you so much for supporting the show. You've been really gracious for a while now, so we greatly appreciate it. He says XT hired to coach defensive ends after the bowl. He's old. He's certainly old enough. He's certainly old enough, Drew. I mean, he's put in the hours.
He has. I would love to see him come back as a defensive end coach.
That'd be really cool. But obviously, I want him to get his shot in the NFL. But
absolutely,
I could totally. I mean, he's not a guy I would mind seeing back in the program at some point in the future if the opportunity were to present itself. So
absolutely,
just XT is the epitome of a Clemson man or a Clemson gentleman. Is as
100%,
this fan
dude.
base likes to say it. And we'll talk about him a little bit later, but
Yeah,
lo-
love that
absolutely.
guy, dude. Love that guy. XT is the man. Love to see him come in. Um,
Uh, Jeremiah's, thank you for the $2. He asked a question. We really talked about it, but do y'all think he gives Nick Eason the whole D line?
I think he
Um,
does. I
I,
think he does.
I think that's definitely in the cards, and that's definitely on the table. And I think that's going to be there's not really a rush to hire a defensive ends coach because Nick Eason is capable of coaching the entire line.
Yes, he is.
That I think that's the judgment call that Dabo Swinney will make in the coming weeks. I don't expect there to be a resolution on that for a while, but that could be something that ends up being the final decision, and I wouldn't be against it. I know they've been good Lord. Daquan Bowers is a guy in consideration for the job. He's been a support staffer for the past couple of years. I could see that. I know that would probably make some fans upset because it would be an internal promotion.
Yeah,
Of another Clemson, former Clemson player that hasn't had much experience.
yeah,
So that would be something. I don't know, but it is. All I know is it is on the table and something that they are considering. But they are also looking at outside options.
yeah.
So that could be something that happens too. But
Look, and
um,
and with this coaching hire, we're going to talk about a couple different coaches that have been let go tonight, and it's going to be super important who Dabo hires for these positions. But at the same time, I would not be upset to hear that Nick Eason is going to take over the entire defensive line. I think he's a super capable coach. He's a coach that guys just absolutely want to play for. They max out for a guy like Nick Eason. I mean, the dude couldn't be a more player friendly coach than you could possibly get. I mean, he's out there doing mat drills. He's in cleats and a helmet. He's out there motivating his guys. So I think he would be a great fit to just take over the entire defensive line. And maybe you just move that defensive end coach position into maybe a special teams position coach and get somebody that simply focuses on special teams alone. That's something that, maybe could happen. I don't know. Clemson traditionally under Dabo Sweeney has kind of broken up the special teams between the coaches on staff and the position coaches that are currently on staff. But maybe you don't need a defensive end coach and a defensive tackle coach to be separate. Maybe Nick Eason just takes the entire defensive line, and then you have an extra coaching spot to hire maybe a special teams coach or a kicking coach or whatever the case may be. I don't really know, but I wouldn't be upset if Nick Eason was just to take the entire defensive line. I think he would get maximum effort out of every single one of those guys. And you've seen how he's developed the defensive tackles so far. So I think he could get something similar out of the defensive ends.
yeah, and I totally, and I think it's a change that I don't think would be you would get too much pushback. I know Clemson has done the defensive tackle, defensive end split for a while now, even going back to when Marion Hobby, and Dan Brooks
Yeah.
were here. So that's just something that Clemson has done, and I guess that's something Dabo likes to have those two things split. But I wouldn't be against it, and honestly, it would be a welcome change. Just having one guy
Yeah.
giving a consistent message, and I will say this. There's whenever you do have that split, there's never not any overlap. Like Nick Eason surely had his hand in in coaching the defensive ends, and
Mhm.
I think that could possibly be why you've seen the improvements from guys like Xavier Thomas and Justin Mascol over the past couple of seasons. But at the end of the day, it still is different when you just have one guy, one voice, pushing a consistent message than having, a totally different guy telling you things, and then you have this guy off to the side that comes over every once in a while and helps you out, but it's not really the same thing.
Right.
So I think it would be something that should be on the table, and it definitely is on the table, and I wouldn't be against it.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So let's transition from the defensive end coach, Lemansky Hall. They got let go. There was another coach for Clemson that got let go this today as well, and that is Thomas Austin. He's been the offensive line coach since 2022. He's a former Clemson offensive lineman, former Clemson player. He is recruited well in his first recruiting cycle. This recruiting cycle, obviously, if you're a Clemson fan that pays attention to recruiting, it has not gone as well in his second season of recruiting. We went after 6 offensive linemen, and we landed one of those offensive linemen that we went after. Really, truly abysmal when it comes to the recruiting class in the second season of Thomas Austin. I do like the shift that Thomas Austin kind of spurned in Clemson when it came to going after bigger, more athletic offensive linemen. However, that has not necessarily transitioned to the field. We got a lot of talent along this offensive line, but a lot of these guys don't seem to be developing in the way that we thought they would. We got several 5 stars along the offensive line. We got 4 stars. We got big bodies. We got guys that should be dominating on the line of scrimmage. And frankly, they're just not. And, one of the big, shortcomings for this Clemson team over the past 2 or 3 seasons has been the offensive line and their inability to play consistent football. You think back to a Notre Dame game last season where we got completely dominated along the offensive line. You think back to this season where we played extremely poorly in some games, and then towards the end of the season, maybe we played a little bit better, but it was always inconsistent with the players that were playing well, right? So even when the Clemson offensive line as a whole was playing a little bit better towards the end of the 2023 season, it was never really the same group of guys. And I think that's truly the reason that probably Dabo Swinney decided to move on, was just frankly the inconsistency that has been the Clemson offensive line over the past 2 to 3 seasons. And 2 of those seasons have been on Thomas Austin. And, I agree with Dabo Swinney moving on. I know it was hard for him. I know it was hard for Dabo Swinney to move on from both of these guys in Lemansky Hall and Thomas Austin. But truly, at the end of the day, it was decisions that had to be made. And Dabo Swinney truly articulated that in his press release, where he said, you know what? It's my job to make difficult decisions in the best interest of this program. And that's what he's doing. So I'm happy that he made this decision. I think our offensive line needs new leadership. I think they need a coach in there that's going to develop them. And frankly, as much as I hate it, I don't think Thomas Austin was getting it done.
Yeah, and you mentioned the recruiting woes. You said we were 1 for 6. At this point, I think it's like 1 for 8. Andrew Dennis, a guy that Clemson was in on recently and had on campus and felt really good about their position with, just committed to Illinois this week. So it just the recruiting woes. This cycle definitely didn't help. But yeah, the play on the field has just not been where it should be. I mean, we came into this year talking about how this offensive line could be a strength. You're returning 4 or 5 starters, including your center, your right tackle, who was a freshman All-American. And, really the only question was who, left tackle. But in reality, the entire line just was not getting it done at certain spots. And
Nope.
that was the thing that was disappointing, because you felt like you had a good group of guys coming back, and you felt like you had built the depth last year that you didn't have beforehand. And the offensive line, quite frankly, was worse than it was last year. I thought, they had taken some strides, during the year last year, and I felt like they were pretty good run blocking, pass protection it was spotty at times, but you saw the growth, and you were like, you kind of felt good. You're like, okay, maybe Thomas Austin is doing a good job. And then you return 4 or 5 stars. Like, this is an experienced group; they should be able to play well together. And really, throughout the season, we just saw the inconsistencies, the lack of ability to really execute at a consistent level on some of the basic stuff and some of the basic stuff that Garrett Riley was trying to run. That made it difficult for this offense to really get off the ground. Cade certainly suffered; his play suffered because of it. And it just wasn't good. And I think that's where a lot of the problems started. And that you can't have that. And you had guys that you expected to rely on that regressed. And yeah, I know losing Walker Parks, that sucked. That was not something something that you can really predict. And maybe that's a little unfair. But because you had said and you had felt like, oh man, we have 9, 8, 9, 10 guys that we feel like can play, and that's certainly not the case. It didn't even feel like we had 5 guys that could play at times.
No.
And so when you don't have when you think you have that depth and you don't, that is an indictment in some ways on how you've been developing and how you've been preparing these players to go out and play real games, because it's practice can only prepare you for so much. And I think the problem is what you want out of practice is that to be the most difficult thing you do in the week. Yeah. Practice is supposed to be the hard part, right? And then the game is supposed to be you go out there and you're prepared, and so everything is easy and everything's fun. You're having fun. This offensive line did not look like they were having fun most of the year, and they did not look prepared for a lot of the year. So that's and some that has to fall on Thomas Austin to a degree, and that's unfortunate. You had guys regress from last year. I thought Blake Miller looked like a shell of his former self this year. Just really, really inconsistent a lot of the year. Guys, that were deeper in the room didn't take that next step that we were kind of hoping. And because of that, you just didn't have the depth that you thought you would have. I mean, Harris Sewell has been a nice. I think that was a good evaluation, but. Who says that you stick with Thomas Austin and he doesn't regress as well? And just all of those things, Colin Sadler, Tristan Lay, I thought, those guys kind of got it going late, but they were not really ready to go out the gate this year. And it definitely hurt you in some of these games. So again, I can only go on this spiel for so long, but I just, the play of the offensive line this year was just really, really disappointing. And I genuinely thought, and I feel like the coaches genuinely thought that this would be a strength and something. Dabo was excited for that group to go out. He said, I want us to win because of this offensive line. I feel like this group is ready. I mean, he was saying all the right things. And the play on the field did not match that.
And that's really the disappointing thing for this Clemson team so far in 2023, right? Is if you heard all the rhetoric coming out of spring practice, out of fall camp for this 2023 team is, and we talked about it preseason, I know I talked about it for sure about how I thought this offensive line could quite possibly be a strength for this Clemson team heading into the 2023 season. And that did not come to fruition. It was just an abysmal performance for most of the season by the offensive line. It was, again, a season of musical chairs for the offensive line. And, for all of those reasons, that's why Thomas Austin got relieved of his duties. He just did not get it done. Dabo Swinney seemed to be super confident, especially heading out of fall camp for this offensive line. And they simply just did not get it done this season. They were wildly inconsistent. They did not protect Cade Klubnik very well in pass block. They were inconsistent in run block. There were different guys that played well in games every single week, but it was, truly never the same 5 guys that were playing well as a unit. We never truly had 5 guys that played as a unit consistently this season. And that's truly the reason that, this offensive line underachieved this year. And it's not because we don't have talent along the offensive line. If you look at the star ratings that Clemson has on the sideline when it comes to their offensive line, they should be playing at a consistent level. They should be playing at a championship level, but they're simply not. And for those reasons, you gotta make a change. You got to see if a change in voice in the room truly changes those things. And I think that's one of the big reasons that Dabo Sweeney decided to move on from Thomas Austin. Again, I hate that guys had to lose their job, but at the end of the day, this is a job that requires production. And those guys that got fired today were not producing, or got fired yesterday were not producing. So, um, at the end of the day, it's unfortunate. I don't, like that people had to get fired, but at the end of the day, the program comes first, and Dabo Sweeney made a tough decision. I'm glad that he made it. Hopefully, we make the hires that produce results on the field coming into the 2024 season. So, with that said, Jordan, will there be any more coaching changes made for the Clemson Tigers in this offseason? Are there any more firings coming from Dabo Sweeney? Do you think he's looking at any more coaches, or is this the end of the coaching attrition we will see for the Clemson Tigers when it comes to the 2023 offseason heading into the new year and the 2024 season?
Well, these types of things are kind of fluid. I don't want to say yes or no. It's possible. I wouldn't rule it out. I don't know. That could be something that the conversations are still being had, but I don't want to. I don't want to say definitively whether there are more coming, but I do think that you should be on the lookout
Yeah.
for more, if that is. And as crazy as today was, there are a lot more. There are a lot more. Bumps to this ride that are coming.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that, whether that is on the coaching staff or the roster. So just be prepared. It's going to be a wild. It's going to be a wild few weeks. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, man, I don't know. I'm going to be completely honest with everybody here in the chat segment. We got 78 people in here right now. So let me just take a moment to thank everybody that's in here right now. Thank you so much for showing up. Me and Jordan do this show every Thursday at 7 p.m. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you know every time we go live with a show. But I honestly I don't know if this is the end of the coaching attrition that will happen at Clemson for the 2023-2024 season. Um, I would think that Dabo Sweeney has a good idea of it. I I would think that he would announce it all at once, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if there's one or two more guys that are ultimately shown the door before the start of the 2024 season, and it'll happen before spring practice. I think happens. So
Way before that. Yeah.
way before spring practice is kicked off, and the new recruits come in, and they kind of kick off the 2024 season, if you will, when it comes to preparing for it. It'll happen before then. I don't know if he'll get rid of any more coaches. I'm sure he's got his eye on a couple more, but we'll see what happens in the program. I know a lot of Clemson fans point to the receiving core, Tyler Grisham, as a position coach, being a guy that they're surprised that wasn't mentioned in this press release. Were you surprised that Tyler Grisham wasn't mentioned in the original firing of position coaches for the Clemson Tigers?
Yeah. I really think that this is, I really think this is something that is just we're gonna have to just kind of buckle up and just get ready for a bumpy ride. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't like speculating, but it is something that at the end of the day we don't really know, and things are going to happen within the program. This is going to be a big off season, and so a big off season means a lot of big changes, and we'll see what those kind of changes are.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I don't think this is the end of it. Um, I just don't think this is the end of it. We'll see where Dabo goes from here. We'll see the decisions that he makes from here. But at the end of the day, anybody that says that Dabo Sweeney doesn't know what's going on with the Clemson program or what the problems are is just completely false. He has proven that he is still a competitor. He is still willing to fire literally anybody that he thinks is not helping Clemson win the games that he think they should win, which is pretty much every single game that they trot out on the field and play, um, is completely false. He just fired two guys, one of which was a former player of his, one of which was a former lifelong friend of his that played with him in Alabama and that has been with the Clemson program for several years, dating all the way back to 2015. So I think Dabo Sweeney made a statement with these two firings of position coaches. I think he let everybody know. He put the country on notice that he is competitive as ever, and that he is going to get Clemson back into the national landscape, the national conversation at all cost. And if that causes him to fire more coaches, I truly believe that he will.
Absolutely. Um, but yeah, and again, this is something that I felt was coming for a while. I don't know. I know there were a lot of questions within the fan base. Would he actually make a change? But I really feel like, after last year, I don't know how you could think and see how this season has played out, and how they really expected this team to be a lot better than they were. I don't know how you could say that he wasn't going to make any sort of change.
Yeah.
It felt pretty obvious to me. It was just a matter of when, not if. Um,
Yeah.
so, and he decides to do it, pull the trigger now. There's no conference championship to play for. Might as well get out ahead of it and figure out what you want to do. No reason to hold on to guys you don't plan on holding on to.
Yeah, and if you know anything about Dabo Sweeney, you figure that he's got his eye on a couple guys for these vacancies in the Clemson coaching staff.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see. I expect an offensive line coach to be hired within this next week or so. I feel like that one's going to be something that Dabo is going to pull the trigger on and get out ahead of pretty soon. I think the defensive end position is definitely something that can wait a little bit longer, and you can kind of take your time and figure out what you want to do. But offensive line is extreme. I mean, that's there's no you can't mess around with that. You gotta zero in on your guy and get him. So we will see. This is going to be a lot of fun. Just I've got notifications turned on for David Hood and Larry Williams and all these Clemson writers.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the news to drop. So it's been a wild day, and we'll talk about some of the non-coaching related changes. Yeah.
All right, Jordan. Let's transfer to the transfer portal.
See what you did there.
Yeah, you see what I did there? Yeah. So let's transition over to the transfer portal. A lot has changed in the past couple years when it comes to the transfer portal, right? We all know that everybody gets one free transfer when it comes to college football. Unpenalized transfer. If you are not a graduate, you get one unpenalized transfer. And then if you are a graduate, you can transfer to anywhere and you can play immediately. But also, a couple rules have changed with the transfer portal when it comes to this season. So the new transfer portal window stretches from December 4th to January 3rd. It's now a 30-day transfer portal versus a 30 or versus a 45-day transfer portal that was previous to this season. So, and then there's another transfer portal from May 1st to May 15th after the spring, and then 5 days after the postseason of any team that plays in the postseason games. So you got a couple different windows, 3 different windows to transfer if you're a participant on any one of these teams. A 30-day transfer portal that is about to start on the 4th of December. And any of the playoff teams, they got a 5-day grace period after their season ends in the postseason. So, with the transfer portal, let's talk about a couple players. There is specifically 4 players that have already floated their name out there to enter the transfer portal. Again, the transfer portal doesn't start or doesn't open until this Monday. But there's a couple Clemson players that have already announced their name into the transfer portal or their intentions to transfer portal. Starting with quarterback Hunter Helms. And this is a guy that started as a walk-on for the Clemson Tigers. He's obviously looking for playing time. He's obviously going to look for a destination where he gets an opportunity to get on the field as a starter. He spent 4 seasons as a backup at Clemson. He's done his due diligence. He's a graduate of Clemson. He's a Tiger for life. I hope that he lands on his feet. Just give a shout out to Hunter Helms. And where do you know anywhere that he'll end up, or what are your thoughts on Hunter Helms leaving the Clemson program? I think he's given pretty much everything he could to Clemson as a backup. He's always been there, and I wish him well. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really have any sort of. I personally, I don't have any sort of knowledge about where he's looking, but I do think it's something that was probably going to happen. He's like you said, he's been in the program a long time. He's gotten his degree. These are the types of players that are always more than likely to transfer. Because there's no real path to starting for him, barring injury, and there wasn't.
But I mean, this is what the transfer portal was truly created for.
Yeah,
is guys like this. I mean, honestly,
absolutely. So I do think this does raise some concerns about your quarterback depth heading into next year, because now you have 3 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster, and Kay Klubnik, Paul Tyson, and Chris Vizina. And Paul Tyson has another year if he wants it, but if he chooses not to, then you only have 2. And I don't think you can go into this next season with 3 scholarship quarterbacks anyway. So I do think that the transfer portal could be something that you look at. Obviously, this recruiting cycle isn't over. Maybe you circle back around on one of the quarterbacks you missed on. I don't know. Who knows? I'm not saying that for any particular reason. I don't know for sure, but I do think you need to take a quarterback somehow, personally, because I don't think you can go into next year with 3 scholarship quarterbacks. I think it definitely hurts competition as well if you don't have 4. So I don't. I really don't think. I don't think it affects how Clemson's quarterback room shapes out next year, and I think that's a big deal. But obviously, I completely understand Hunter going and getting. He spent 4 years in the program, and now it's his time to go out and get a chance to really play.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is important because of the scholarship numbers at quarterback you have now.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to have a certain amount of backups, but behind your starting quarterback, obviously, Hunter Helms is obviously going to move on and go to another spot. I hope he gets a starting position somewhere in college football and really gets to, show his ability. But with that said, if a Paul Tyson decides to not come back, which is completely a possibility for the Clemson Tigers, then we are down to a K Klubnik, a Chris Vizina, and then a Pierman in the quarterback room. So with that said, you
Hold on,
may need.
hold on. I do want to, because the people are talking about it. Trent Pierman is not on scholarship, guys. Like, why are we? I don't understand
Yeah,
why.
no, he's not.
Like,
He's a walk on. He's a
yeah,
walk
I
on.
don't. I get the frustration with it's like, oh man, he's a Daniel High School kid, but why does that matter? He's a walk on.
Yeah,
His
he's
dad
not
is on
taking.
his dad is on staff, and he's not taking up a scholarship. I don't.
Yeah, he's not taking up any spot at the Clemson roster that anyone could not take up. He's simply a walk-on quarterback that provides depth for the the, the
Every
scout team. He
yeah
he run
every
he runs
yeah,
he,
every
he runs
program
the
has
scout team.
walk-ons.
I mean, they all have walk-ons. He's a scout team quarterback at best. So with Trent Pierman, you have three quarterbacks not on scholarship. You only have two scholarship quarterbacks in K Klubnik and Chris Vizina, and then you got to walk on a Trent Pierman. So I could definitely see Clemson bringing on another veteran quarterback through the transfer portal, and that's if they believe in K Klubnik, right? What if they don't believe in K Klubnik? Maybe they bring in somebody that is going to compete for the position. I don't know how the Clemson coaching staff feels about K Klubnik or if they think he's the quarterback of the future. But if they do, they're going to simply bring on a quarterback that is, reminiscent of a Paul Tyson, a Hunter Helms, those guys that they brought in the past that are veteran quarterbacks that haven't had much success in college football that just brings in depth. Trent Pierman is not a guy that is taking anything away from the Clemson program at all. So,
Right.
um,
Hustler Inc. Thank you for commenting, but he's taking. Do you know how many roster spots a college football team has?
if
I mean,
they got,
every team has walk-ons. Every single program in college
yeah,
football has walk-ons. He's not
counting
preventing.
against the roster numbers, and by the roster numbers, what I'm talking about is scholarship numbers. So,
Right,
like
and he's not
Clemson,
even he's
Clemson
not
has
even okay, go ahead.
Clemson has a scholarship number for every position on Clemson's roster for quarterback, linebacker, corner, cornerback, defensive tackle, defensive end, offensive tackle, all offensive lineman. Like they have scholarship numbers for each of one of those people or each one of those position groups, if you will. Trent Pierman doesn't count against any of those roster spots because
Right.
he's simply a walk-on player. He's just a guy. Like, I mean, these like you don't realize how robust these Clemson are. These not just these Clemson rosters are, but these college football. I mean, they got like 110, 120 guys on
Yeah,
roster. I mean,
120
they
plus.
and
It's
they
a
only
lot.
have 80 scholarships. So
Right.
like all the rest of those
25, yeah.
dudes are just extras. They're just guys. So
Yeah,
I mean,
and so
they're
it's not so. And the point we're getting at is Trent Pierman is not taking some spot from some kid that Clemson could have, that you could replace with a difference maker or something. That's
yeah, no.
so like when we rail on, like when we get upset about who's on the team and that we can talk about guys that are on scholarship and we can have that conversation, but I don't understand the point in railing on walk on, like why. And
Walk-ons don't
it's
count.
not like he's playing, and I think that's another thing. So I mean, so not only is he not on scholarship, he's not playing. He's not playing in place of somebody that should be that should be. He's on. He's just on the team. Every team has has walk-on quarterbacks, scout team quarterbacks. There's no. I mean, there's. So I think people kind of when they get upset about all the Daniel high school kids and all that. Like half of the kids that we get from Daniel are walk-ons. They're not
We're
taking up
walk-ons, yeah.
a scholarship. With very few of them actually are actually getting scholarship spots. And the ones that do are at least, are decently rated recruits. So
Yeah.
it's not like we're just handing, taking the whole, Daniel, 2023 Daniel High, football team and putting them on scholarship. Like
Yeah, no, they're not getting scholarships.
so I think that part's overblown. I mean,
Yeah,
they're walk-ons. They don't, you know.
extremely overblown. So let's move on from
I
that.
didn't mean to get hung
And
up on that, but I just wanted
yeah,
to address it.
and the Hunter Helms thing. We wish Hunter Helms well. I hope he goes on just like Chase Bryce to get a starting position and win some big games. But let's move on to a wide receiver that decided to transfer a couple days after Hunter Helms. Bo Collins entered his name in the transfer portal today. Um, he ended this season with 510 receiving yards, which is a career high for him. He has on a career, he's got 91 catches for 1,290 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's played in 32 games, 27 starts. Um, and I think maybe, Bo Collins is seeing the writing on the wall. He's seeing a Brian Wesco. He's seeing a TJ Moore. He's seeing the other guys that are already on the roster kind of pushing ahead of him. And, maybe that's the reason that he is transferring. He may be the first kind of transfer that is a quote unquote starter that is leaving the Clemson program. But at the end of the day, I think it's a little bit different because of who Clemson has returning at wide receiver and who they have coming in at freshman that people truly believe will be day one instantaneous contributors to the program.
Yeah. This one was a little, it was a slight surprise, but I think there was a lot of reasons to think that this was coming.
Yeah.
Um, and Bo has been a player that has been one of Clemson's more consistent offensive weapons over the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously you just never really saw the progression in him taking that next step. Clemson really needed him to be more of a wide receiver one, and kind of a guy that you could go to in a pinch. And he showed flashes of that, but never really took that next step. And that was, I think that was the frustration at times. But
Yeah.
it's a big loss. I mean, that his experience, his really just the experience. He's still a decently talented player, and a guy that definitely would have helped you next year. But he decided to move on. He's been here 3 years, and it's his, that he felt like he needed a change of scenery. So best of luck to him. And he's had it's been an up and down career, but I hope that I still think he's a talented player, and he'll have the opportunity wherever he chooses to go to kind of build his NFL draft stock and have that breakout season that he just wasn't really able to have here. So
Yeah, absolutely.
best of luck to Bo.
Yeah, best of luck to Bo. I mean, he truly has been one of our most consistent wide receivers over the past couple seasons. I'm really sad to see Bo go. I think he was truly a really good wide receiver for us. But at the end of the day, I do understand, why he wants to go elsewhere. And I do think that we got some players coming in that could truly challenge him, specifically for that boundary wide receiver in Brian Wesco. I mean, you got a Brian Wesco and a TJ Moore coming in. These guys are both explosive wide receivers. They're guys that can be in the boundary. They're guys that can stretch the field. They're guys that can high point the ball. So, it is surprising and then not surprising at the same time, if that makes sense to anybody out there. But transitioning to the third guy that has entered his name into the transfer portal for the Clemson Tigers, and that is Sage Enos. he entered the transfer portal along with Bo Collins. He's been at Clemson for 4 years. He obviously had a season-ending injury. He tore his ACL earlier this season. He had 6 catches for 77 yards in 41 games, 2 starts. Obviously, you got guys sitting behind him in Josh Sapp and Olsen Pat Henry that you've seen more prominently on the field since he has gone down. So, were you surprised to see Sage Enos transfer? What are your thoughts on his transfer? Do you think Clemson is in any sort of dismay because he transferred, or do you think we got a couple guys behind him that are going to fill that role nicely?
Um, I I think it's a notable loss.
Yeah,
Because
especially his blocking ability, right? I
right,
mean,
yeah,
that is a loss.
and it felt like he was starting to come along before the injury, so that's really disappointing.
Yeah,
But he's a guy that provides a lot and was really a big factor in Clemson's run game, the blocking especially. So that was that's disappointing. I do think the tight end room is from a number standpoint, you're in a little bit of a better spot than maybe some of the other positions. So I don't know if you go to the portal. I don't think you necessarily go to the portal for a tight end. I don't think so. But you're going to need some guys to step up. Obviously Josh Sapp is a guy that is going to have to take that next step. We'll see what. Although I do think things get a little bit interesting if, say, a guy like say Jake Brenningstool does decide to enter the portal.
yeah.
Then you have some questions because now you're relying on Josh Sapp is your number one tight end, and then you have Olsen Pat Henry and Marcus Dixon behind him,
I would,
and those two guys we haven't really seen much from either of those two guys.
yeah, I wouldn't see why Jake Brenningstool at this point would enter the portal though. I mean, and
I I mean I don't know.
unless he's looking to go to the NFL draft. I mean, he's tight end one at Clemson. He has been all season. I
Yeah,
don't see why he would want to go into the portal. Just because of his position at Clemson. I don't know. I mean, and he could. I mean, look, anything could happen. This is the day and age of the portal, so nothing should surprise any college football fan. But
right.
I would not think Jake Brenningstool is going anywhere this season.
I I'm not ready to go that far. I don't have any I don't have any inside knowledge or know that he's going to transfer. But I'm just saying that I'm not ruling any. This season, this off season, I'm not ruling anybody out.
Yeah, yeah, no, for
So
sure.
I just
Yeah, yeah,
Jake Brenningstool was a guy that was very close to. I know for a fact he was a guy that was close to transferring last year, and
yeah,
he had sort of a breakout year this year, but it still wasn't like the quite the numbers that we kind of hoped. But
yeah,
so I don't know. He could that's something he may be considering. I don't know. So maybe he decided he wants to go somewhere else with a little bit more of explosive passing game. It could happen. Again, and that's what I want to caution Clemson fans is don't I in this day and age, you cannot assume anybody is safe.
right. Absolutely.
So I'm
You have to recruit your own roster every single year. That is
absolutely
true.
and just with how this season has gone and things have definitely not gone the way that this team thought that it would. I mean there are some players that are still having those conversations with Dabo. About potentially entering the portal, and some of them may be guys you wouldn't expect. So I never want to just say I think this guy is staying definitively. You
Yeah,
can
no.
so
Yeah,
that's why I'm hesitant to say there's no way Jake, or I'm hesitant to say there's no way Jake transfers or he's locked in, because I can't, especially guys on the offensive side of the ball. I cannot I can't just assume that.
hmm
But yeah, again, but with Sage Ennis, I think he has a chance to go somewhere and be a strong contributor. He's a good blocker, and he was starting to come along as a pass catching option. But Clemson does need to look and find that guy, because you need to have a really strong blocking tight end. And Jake Brenningstool is, although he's improved in that aspect, he's not
that guy. Yeah,
No.
he's not that guy.
He's not that guy.
So hopefully a Josh App or Olsen Pat Henry can step into that role a little bit more. But moving on to the last player so far for the young transfer portal season to enter the transfer portal for the Clemson Tigers, and that is offensive lineman, offensive tackle Mitchell Mays. He has spent basically 4 years at Clemson as a reserve offensive lineman. He's got non-starts over 2 seasons, although those are mainly due to injury. He was not able to kind of keep his position even through injury this season. He got kind of a couple starts this season due to injury, wasn't able to keep the position that he was put into because of his inconsistent play. He was a 4-star recruit in 2020. A big-time offensive lineman when we landed him. Never seemed to develop, never seemed to kind of get his footing in the Clemson program, always seemed to perform pretty inconsistently for the Tigers. Was there any surprise that Mitchell Mays put his name into the transfer portal for you?
No, this was definitely probably the least surprising of the four. I probably would have put a large amount of money after the year that he would be
same. For sure.
Yeah, I think this was something that was this was something that was coming. He's been in the program for 4 years. He has his degree. He'll be a graduate transfer, and he'll have an opportunity. And I think there was some, these teams, every year Clemson has, after the end of the regular season, they have these exit interviews and they have these talks with every player on the roster about where your standing is with the team, what your future is like, what you need to do going forward. Do you need to, are things going good and just stay the course, or do you need to maybe look for opportunities elsewhere? And I have a feeling there was probably some mutual agreement that it was probably time to move on. He's been in the program a long time, and probably needs to find an opportunity elsewhere, because I don't see any path to him being a consistent starter here. So
no.
That one was not surprising, and it does free up a scholarship. I do think, I've been pretty vocal that Clemson needs to look into the portal for offensive linemen, and that makes it easier. That combined with the misses in this in this 2024 class, there's probably more to come in the offensive line room.
Yep.
It just makes it pretty clear. So
yeah, absolutely. Look, and I do think that opens things up for Clemson along the offensive line, specifically when it comes to the transfer portal. And that came pretty evident with Clemson's first public offer, I guess, if you will, of the 2023-2024 transfer portal season. And Alan Heron, a 6'6", 315-pound guy from Shorter University, which is a Division II school, I believe. And he's got offers from Clemson, Auburn, Miami, Texas Tech, Penn State, a bunch of other schools. He's got a ton of D1 offers because of his size. But that's also a reason that Clemson's probably going to hire an offensive line coach pretty soon. They're going after guys in the portal, specifically along the offensive line, which they need. I think they need to go, in the portal to defensive ends as well. So they probably need to make a decision sooner than later on a defensive end coach, whether that be, just pushing, the defensive tackle coach over and making him over the entire defensive line, or hiring a new guy. They really got to make these decisions pretty quickly. But, Allen, this guy's going to take an official visit to Texas Tech this weekend, and then he's going to go to Penn State next weekend, and then Clemson the following weekend. So I think he'll be at Clemson the 15th of December, I think is the date that he will be at Clemson. So what do you think Clemson's chances are on landing this portal offensive tackle? I think he's currently ranked as the number 4 portal offensive tackle. I think he's the number 15th portal player so far this season, and he's looking to probably make a December commitment, but not 100% sure whether he's going to make that December commitment or not. So, how do you see that playing out? And do you see that as playing into Clemson hiring a new offensive line coach?
Well, I will say I don't I don't have any any idea about where he's leaning, but the fact that he's giving Clemson an official visit is a good sign, and you get that last official visit so far that
that last official visit, yeah.
So I think that's a big deal, and he's a really versatile football player. I think that's kind of what Clemson is looking for. He's a guy that I think has the size and length to play at multiple positions. He was a guy that was kind of, you look at him and you watch his film and you're like, how did he go so unnoticed in high school? But he hadn't been playing football very long, if I remember correctly. I think I'm forgetting where he's from, but he hadn't played football for very long. I know that. But he's really developed into a nice player. I think he's a redshirt sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
So, he'll have a couple of years of eligibility should Clemson land him. And that's a pretty nice thing. But yeah, it's an offer that's a big deal. And I think Clemson has the angle of, hey, you're one of our first, portal offers. And, we don't really do this very much. So if you're getting an offer, that means we really want you and we really like you and think you can play here. So I do think there's the angle that they can play there. This isn't one of those. I don't expect that. I don't think this is an NIL type of recruitment, which obviously is probably more attractive for Dabo and in Clemson as far as finding a portal guy, because you don't want to get into it. I don't think Clemson playing the portal is going to be the team that's going to be throwing around the NIL money and outbidding people. So this is a recruitment that I think you can and I don't want to say should, because Penn State is a really good program and they've definitely been trending upward. But this is one that you can win, and it's one you need. You need the depth you need, and this isn't just a depth piece. This is a guy that you feel like could potentially start. So
Yes,
you definitely need. This is a battle that you want to win. But again, the portal for FBS players opens up on December 4th, and we'll see what other offers they put out. But this is a nice start, and this is a sign that Clemson is going to be a little bit more aggressive this cycle as far as getting guys in the program. So
absolutely.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see where Clemson goes with the portal. We'll see, how many more Clemson players enter the portal between now and spring practice, between now and the end of bowl season. We'll see how many more coaching changes Clemson makes between now and the end of bowl season, and now and the end of spring practice. There's a ton of time left. There truly is a ton of time left for the Clemson Tigers, and all the things that could happen between now and then. I'm sure there will be a ton of stuff to talk about. Hopefully, we land this guy Allen. He's a huge get. I think he'll be probably a contributor if Clemson lands him in the transfer portal. But at the end of the day, who knows what happens? I don't think he'll be the only offensive lineman that Clemson goes after. I do think they'll go after some defensive end positions and possibly some other positions as well. Maybe even wide receiver, maybe some linebacker. Who knows what Clemson does? It's going to be dependent on guys that leave for the NFL. It's going to be dependent on guys that leave through the transfer portal, how many spots are available. We all know how, scholarships work in Division I college football. You only get 85 scholarships. So you got to stay under that number. You got to stay within that. So it's truly going to be based off of what players come back for the Clemson Tigers and what positions are needed the most. So there's definitely some room for Clemson to exercise the transfer portal. And I do think they do that this season. I think some of the noise out there for the Clemson Tigers and Dabo Swinney of not using the transfer portal is definitely going to be, kind of quailed this season. It's not going to be as loud come this offseason because I do think Clemson is going to take several transfer portal players this offseason. So we'll see how it ends up. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Let's transfer to NFL-bound players for the Clemson Tigers. We've had a couple players declare already for the NFL, and I just want to give some love to those guys. I want to get a shout out to those guys. I want to wish them well in their NFL career. I hope they do Clemson proud, and that is first and foremost, we'll talk about Jeremiah Trotter. He is absolutely the leader of this defense this season. He leads the defense in tackles. He's got the highest grade on defense as far as Pro Football Focus is concerned. He absolutely balled out, specifically in the second half of the season. He started off a little slow this year, but really got his act together in the second half of the season. He absolutely balled out. So talk to me a little bit about Jeremiah Trotter. I know he is declared for the NFL draft. He put out a statement on Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter, about his decision to declare for the NFL draft. He thanked the Clemson fans. He thanked the coaching staff and all of those things. And we truly do wish him well and hope that he goes out and has a very successful NFL career. He absolutely balled out this season as a Clemson Tiger. He was one of the reasons that this defense was so successful and ranked so highly this season. So talk to me a little bit about Jeremiah Trotter and how highly you think he'll go in the NFL draft.
Yeah. This was definitely expected. He's been, as you said, he's been the leader of the defense. He's been one of the best Clemson linebackers that we've seen in quite some time. This was expected. He comes from an NFL background. His dad, obviously, if you're an Eagles fan, that name, is probably makes you feel a little old. But yeah, this was expected, and he was certainly, especially in the second half of the year, put together a really, really nice year and led the team in sacks, led the team in tackles. He's just a phenomenal football player and has definitely put himself into first round consideration. So we'll see where exactly he ends up. I think I think the knock against him will be his size. He's not an overly rangy linebacker or long linebacker. He's kind of on the shorter end, which will probably knock him some points. But I think his instinctiveness, his ability as a pass rusher, and his tackling ability, I think those are things that are going to be really attractive for scouts in the NFL. So I'm excited to see where he ends up. I think his stock is completely understand. I think his stock is at the point where it makes sense to go ahead and declare. And best of luck to him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think Jeremiah Trotter stock is going to get any higher than it is right now. He's played great in pass protection. He's played great in run protection. He's got tons of tackles for losses. He's got quite a few sacks this season. He's just played out of his mind. He's been a captain for this defense. He's been a leader for this defense. I just wish him well. I hope he goes to a great situation. I hope he has a long NFL career. And let's turn the page to the other guy that has declared for the NFL draft, and that is none other than cornerback Nate Wiggins. He is declared for the NFL draft as well. He's a guy that has been absolutely elite this season. He spent a little time injured after that Florida State game. We all know what happened there. But this is a guy that we saw grow up before our eyes as a Clemson Tiger. He did not come in as the complete lockdown corner that he is leaving Clemson as. And I think that's a testament to the Clemson coaching staff, the secondary coaching staff, and the defensive coaching staff as a whole. They really developed Nate Wiggins. This guy is a guy that is just, frankly, just really tough. I mean, he is the epitome of a NFL defensive back. He's a guy that's got a short-term memory. He's a guy that accepts every challenge that comes his way. He wants to be lined up against the most elite receiver that the offense has to offer, and he just frankly gets the job done. I can't wait to see what he does in the league. He's going to be, one of those players that I think represents Clemson very well in the league, and that brings recruits to Clemson because of his success.
Absolutely. And he's really he's going to be a poster child for, Mike Reed's development, just because how he came in, he had some growing up to do. And obviously he got thrown into the fire last year, but he really responded. It's really since that Wake Forest game, he's been one of the best corners in college football. And this season, he really showed it. He's just watching him, he's one of the most talented corners that Clemson, has had. He's gonna. I don't know if he's Clemson's had some really good defensive backs over the years. You think of guys like Mackenzie Alexander, AJ Terrell in recent years, Andrew Booth. I think he's right up there with those guys, honestly. And he's definitely, I think he's been my favorite player to watch over the past couple of years, really, and just enjoyed the energy he's brought to the game. He's just a really, really phenomenal. He's a phenomenal athlete, but a really smart player. And just, he has that mentality that you want in an NFL cornerback, just because you have to be able to have a short memory. You get beat one time, you lose a rep, but he goes right back at it as if nothing happened, the next. And he didn't lose many reps this year. So
no, he did not.
He's just he's a phenomenal football player and one of the best corners that I've seen come through Clemson. I think he's going to be a pretty high draft pick, come next year. So it's going to be interesting.
You've heard Dabo Swinney talk about him, and about just, I think one of the biggest things to just kind of highlight for Nate Wiggins is just his maturity. That he has grown over his Clemson career and his college football career. Dabo Swinney talked about Nate Wiggins early on in his career, about how he was kind of immature. He didn't prepare the way that he needed to. He didn't take film sessions and workout sessions maybe as seriously as he should have. And then it just shifted for him at some point last season, sometime after the Wake Forest game, where he just got cooked, basically. And he just locked in. He matured. He started taking his preparation seriously. You heard Dabo Swinney talk about it last season, and that is just, grown leaps and bounds over into the 2023 season. And he's been just straight up a lockdown corner pretty much all season for the Clemson Tigers. And you just love to see that from a young guy. Everybody doesn't come in NFL ready. Everybody doesn't come in, fully matured, but this Clemson staff got the best out of him. And it truly is a testament to their ability to develop corners and his ability to take hard coaching, because I know he received much of it last
Yeah.
season because of his immaturity and, his, just, kind of how he approached the game before. And he completely made a 180 and became one of the most elite corners in college football. And for those reasons, he's going to get absolutely paid in the NFL, and he's going to get rewarded with a extremely high draft round pick, I would assume. So
Yeah.
shout out to him. Hopefully he has a very long NFL career. Hopefully he's a AJ Terrell type NFL back in the National Football League and continues the Clemson football legacy when it comes to cornerbacks in the league, because we're starting to roll them out, man, and that's only going to produce more and more recruits for the Clemson Tigers, the more of those guys that get into the league and start being successful. So it only benefits the Clemson Tigers that he has a successful career in the National Football League.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna miss watching him. I mean, this has been like seriously,
Yeah.
like, I kind of understated it, but I mean, he's had one of the best seasons I've seen from a Clemson corner.
Yeah.
And I think he's a guy that's going to do extremely well in the combine. I mean, the athleticism is elite. I mean, I think he's going to run a 4.43 something, probably in the 40-yard dash. Like he's got elite speed, the ranginess. He's not the biggest guy physically, but he plays bigger than he is, and
Absolutely.
he's as a cover corner. I don't know if Clemson's had many better than him. So
And he's a willing tackler in the
yeah,
running game and in the screen game. And I think that's one of maybe the more underrated things about Nate Wiggins' kind of game is, yes, he's a guy that can absolutely cover. He can lock down a number one wide receiver, but he's a guy he'll go get his nose bloody, man. He'll go tackle a running back. He'll go tackle guys in the spring game or in the screen game. And he's a guy that will absolutely come up and run support and get the job done. He's a guy that can make really good open field tackles. So he's going to have a really successful career, I think.
absolutely. But yeah, we spent a long time just loving up on him. But
Yeah, man.
He's been a joy to watch. And he just I put him right up there with a lot of the best corners to come through Clemson.
Yeah, he'll be just fine.
Yeah.
But let's transition to Clemson's bowl game. Okay, Clemson's bowl game will be announced obviously at a later date after the conference championship games have been played and the dust settles. Bowl games will be selected and announced. And one of the big questions that will be asked for a lot of the Clemson Tiger players is who's playing in the bowl game. And one of the Clemson Tigers, one of my favorite Clemson Tigers for several seasons now, and it's no secret to anybody that is watching the show now or anybody that has listened to the show for any length of time, is Xavier Thomas. And he came out and absolutely put all rumors to rest. He said that Clemson, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but he said Clemson has given everything to him. They did not give up on him when he was at his darkest hour, and he's not going to give up on them either. He's going to run it out there one more time for the Clemson Tigers. So, selfishly, as a fan, I'm so excited to see Xavier Thomas suit up in that orange and purple for one last time for his college career and then move on to the NFL. I hope he has a super successful career in the NFL as well. But I cannot wait to see this dude and what he's going to do in the bowl game for the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never, I'm not one to bash guys for opting out, and obviously, that's something that is kind of divisive amongst fan bases about those kinds
Yeah.
of decisions. But I do think it's always cool to see a player just decide to give it one more go. XT is a guy that I've admired just because of his perseverance, and he's a guy that's been through a lot since he's been here, and he's one of those guys that could have easily called it quits. Maybe went somewhere else, hit the transfer portal, but he's a guy that stuck it out, and he's just the example of what can happen. When you just give it time, and he really had a nice year, and I felt like it sucks it didn't show more in the stat sheet, because he really was extremely disruptive this year. But we can talk about all the times all the games he played where he couldn't get a holding call to save his life, but
never, dude. They said we ain't calling one single hold on Xavier Thomas for the season. I swear all the refs had like a meeting. They had like a symposium in the offseason. They were like, Xavier Thomas, no, that dude's not getting a holding call all season. I swear to God, every time I saw Xavier Thomas, he was getting grabbed by the neck trying to get to the quarterback.
But yeah, I think that he's a great example of and he's been a great ambassador of Clemson. I'm really happy that we get to see him suit him up one more time. It was funny because in his tweet saying he was coming back, someone had replied. He was like, because they had misread what he said. They thought he was saying he was coming back for another year, and he was like, oh nah, I gotta go. This is it, man. I was like, it's like my time is up.
I ain't got no more eligibility.
Yeah. I thought that was funny. And he's really not that old. I mean, there's a lot of 6-year players that are like 24, 25. He's still only 23.
Yeah.
So, he's a guy that's going to, he's not going to be a super high NFL draft pick. But I think he's a guy that has a shot to stick in the league if things go right for him. So
yeah,
I'm definitely going to be his biggest fan, or
absolutely, dude. I can't wait to see where he lands in the league, because I will 100% want to be one of his biggest fans, man. Look, if there's a team, and there'll be a team out there that takes a chance on him, and I think they'll be proven right, and they'll get a steal in the draft when they get that guy, because XT, man, he's made of the right stuff. He's been through so much in his football career, just his short football career at Clemson. He's been through so much, and he's persevered. He's kept his head down. He's kept his nose clean. He's battled through a lot of demons at Clemson, both health wise, when it comes to just being sick, when it comes to being injured, and just being just maturing as a player. There's an NFL franchise out there that's going to get a special guy in Xavier Thomas, and I think he's probably going to become a really good player in the NFL.
Absolutely. As far as other people playing in the bowl game, we still yet to determine. We do know that Jeremiah Trotter and Nate Wiggins will not be playing in this game.
They will not.
Yeah. So
and they shouldn't.
They really shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
I wouldn't complain if they did, and I'd applaud them and all that. But those guys are potential first round picks.
But we're not playing. We're not playing in the playoffs. We're not playing in a New Year's Six bowl. They really shouldn't play in this game.
Yeah.
So I've literally no hard feelings for those dudes opting to start preparing for the NFL draft. I really don't. And I'm sure they won't be the only ones. I'm assuming there's probably going to be a couple other guys that announced that they're probably not playing in the bowl game. It'll probably be announced closer to when Clemson bowl game is announced, whether it's the Holiday Bowl or the Gator Bowl, or whatever bowl that Clemson ends up going to. I'm sure there'll be a couple more guys that announce that they're probably not playing in the game. But super happy that we get to see XT trot out there for one last time with that Paul on his helmet.
Absolutely. It's been a treat. All right.
But
Ready to turn it over to the comment section before we wrap it up. It's been a long show, loaded show.
yeah,
But we had a lot to get to. So thank you
yeah.
guys
Sorry,
for sticking with us.
sorry, yeah. Sorry, guys. I know we got 65 people in here right now. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. I hope you guys are subscribed to the channel. Hit that like button for us. It helps us out on these live videos. We've been going for close to 2 hours now, but at this time, we're going to turn it over to the comment section. Thank you guys so much for showing up, hanging out with us. But we're going to turn it over to you guys. If you guys got any questions, any comments, anything that you want us to respond to, please go ahead and put it in the chat section. We're going to go through it for the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll get out of here, and we'll see you guys next week, man.
Yeah. I do want to. I did get a question earlier in the show that I starred from John, so I wanted to make sure I got it. He had asked. He said, "Question for Jordan and Craven: what is your opinion of Lemansky Hall leaving on Darian Mayo or Adam Kasai?" I suspect not. Yeah, I really wouldn't expect that to be a huge difference maker.
No,
you know, in these types of recruitments, you know, well, first of all, you never fire a guy or hold on to a guy to preserve your recruiting class. You never do that. If you feel like you need to make a change, you make a change regardless of who he has committed and all of that. Because at the end of the day, they're committing to the head coach. They're committing to the school, mostly the head coach, if we're being honest. But which is why a head coach leaving, results in a way more flux in a recruiting class than anything else. But they're committing to play for Dabo Swinney, and they're going to. They certainly have some crossover with Nick Eason. They certainly are. Have not gone their whole recruitment without talking to him, and he's a guy that's he's a great recruiter, across the board, and a great people person. So I have no worry about that. I don't think that would affect their decision.
I don't either.
And those guys seem pretty locked in. Darian Mayo, he just closed out he had 18 sacks this year. I think that was just shy of his school's record. So
that dude is an animal, man. Yeah. That dude is an animal, dude.
Yeah, he's a monster. I'm excited.
18 freaking sacks, man. That's crazy. I keeping with that same vein, Jordan. I started a comment from earlier from Brandon, and he said probably why Grisham still has a job, doesn't want to lose Wesco or Moore. Wait until after signing day and the bowl game.
Yeah, Brandon. Well, and that goes back to what I'm saying. Listen, the Tyler. I've seen several people talk about Tyler Grisham. If there is a change being made, it's not it. The recruiting class is not in mind. You don't. No. Again, you don't hold on to a guy to preserve to save your class or keep guys in your class.
Right.
You don't do that. Dabo is not going to operate like this. It's certainly the last coach I would expect to operate like that. The fact that Tyler Grisham has a job has nothing to is still employed currently has nothing to do with keeping Bryant Wesco or TJ Moore. And my personal take on it, because there's some people in here that think that Tyler Grisham should be let go. And I think there's a conversation to be had there. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I will say in his defense, I do think his room has taken some steps forward this year. Obviously the end of the year wasn't great. He didn't have his top two receivers. Well, not his top two, but two of the top guys that they were expecting to rely on for most of the year, Cole Turner, Antonio Williams.
Yep.
And his recruits have been the better players on the team over the past couple of years.
There you go.
So I want to give him that credit and the fact that he was able to land TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco, who are definitely by far the most elite prospects he's landed since he's been here.
I give my honest opinion on Tyler Grisham. Obviously, I'm not 100% sold on him
Me
as
neither.
a wide receiver coach. I'm not going to lie. I'm with much of college football or Clemson football fans with, I'm not sure. But honestly, I think he's probably going to get another season. Um,
Yeah, I could
because
see
he's
that.
recruited so well when it comes to TJ Moore, Brian Wesco, guys like that. You mentioned, some of the guys that he has recruited have been the best receivers on Clemson roster. So I think because of that, he's probably going to get another season. But again, he's a guy that Dabo Sweeney's probably looking at. He's a guy that Dabo Sweeney's paying attention to. Look, Dabo's not going to take any sort of subpar performance from any position coach at this point. If
Right.
if his firing has proven if his firings over the past 2 seasons have proved anything to Clemson fans, it's that Dabo Sweeney will literally fire anyone to sustain success at Clemson, regardless of how close they are or how far his relationship goes back with the coach. So, best believe if he feels that Tyler Grissom should be fired, Dabo Sweeney will fire him.
Yeah.
Make no mistake about it. He will fire him if he truly believes that he needs to be fired.
Yeah.
So, because of that, I will trust that Dabo Sweeney is making the correct decision, whether he fires him or he doesn't fire him. Because Dabo Sweeney over the past 2 off seasons now has proven to me that his personal relationship with coaches does not take precedence over what he feels is best for the Clemson program. And I think he's
Absolutely.
proven that over the past 2 seasons to Clemson fans. So we have to trust him if he allows a coach an additional season. That's how I feel about it. So
Right. And so yeah, I personally I can see reasons why you would make a change and why you wouldn't. If you feel like
yeah,
you can go, if you feel like you can go get a big time wide receiver coach, I mean, I'm all for it. But I do think there are defenses for retaining Tyler Grisham, and I think there are some. I think there are things that Tyler Grisham did this year that I liked.
I
And
do. I do hope that we go get a big time offensive line coach. I
yes,
do. I do hope we go score a big name
I
on the offensive line coaching.
I have reason to believe that we will be pretty happy with who they end up getting. Um,
Okay. Okay.
I will say that.
We'll just leave it
Um,
there. We'll just leave it
so,
there.
um, I do think this is one of those hires that Dabo is going to be swinging for the fences. So,
Thank God.
um,
I can't wait.
but
I'd
we'll see how it plays out.
honestly, I'd be happy with a big name on the offensive line hire, and then Nick Eason just taking over the defensive line.
Yeah,
I think Nick Eason's that good of a coach.
yeah,
I just really do. I believe in Nick Eason. I believe in the fact that he gets the most out of his players. I would love to see him coach just the entire defensive line. I don't know that we need two separate defensive line coaches. I just don't know that we need that.
yeah.
Maybe we do, and maybe they hire somebody, but I'd be 100% okay with Nick Eason just taking over the defensive line as a whole.
Absolutely. Let's see what else. Uh, Darth Rebel asked, "Will Adam Randall be in the portal Monday?" I don't know. We'll see.
I wouldn't
I,
be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
um, but again, nobody's safe. Nothing will surprise me.
No, literally
Um,
nothing.
pretty much. There might be one or two players that would surprise me, but in this day and age, I just there's not much. It's really unpredictable. I mean, you had your in-state rival just lose their top wide receiver. They were expecting to be their top wide receiver next year after he had put literally tweeted out that he was coming back next year. in Juice Wells. So it just anything can happen, and yeah, no. So I don't rule anything out when it comes to the transfer portal era, but we'll see. I don't like to speculate on players who haven't announced. I don't want to say names or anything like that, but he's certainly a guy I'm looking at for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I want to find someone who's asking an actual question. I've seen some people ask about Trevor Etienne. I
He's
guess
not coming.
well that'll very much depend on some decisions made, but so far I have no reason to believe that Clemson is looking at. I would love that for obviously I would love I would love for Clemson to look at him.
I don't think he's coming, man.
I, yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
think
have
he
reason to believe
fits.
is
He
coming.
he doesn't. To me, he doesn't fit into what the Clemson running back room is right now. That's with me assuming
Well, I
that we
disagree there.
lose.
I think his speed is something that
No,
Clemson doesn't really
for
have.
sure. I just don't think he would be attracted to the Clemson running back room right now.
Oh, okay, yeah. We'll see what Will Shipley and Phil
Maybe if
Maffitt
we
do.
lose one of the top guys or both of the top guys, maybe then. But like Clemson's running back room as it stands right now, why would he want to go into that? Like
Yeah.
that's a tough room to go into right now.
And
But yeah, obviously, if Will Shipley or Phil Maffa leaves, or both of them leave, who knows what happens in the next couple weeks. Obviously, I would love for Clemson to get Trevor Etienne. I mean, he's got Clemson ties. Obviously, he's a great back. He's athletic. He's fast. But as the Clemson running back room stands today, it wouldn't make sense for him to come to Clemson.
yeah. And he's a guy. He didn't come out of high school. We did everything we could to play the family angle, but he's a guy that I don't know. I think he's going to stay in the SEC somewhere. I don't really have any reason to think he's looking elsewhere, which is unfortunate. I'd love to have him. I really wanted him out of high school, and obviously he's shown every bit of why he's a really good football player, just like his brother. So
he would have had a better career at Clemson, just in case he was wondering.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding, but whatever. He could have beat all his brother's records. Why wouldn't he want to do that?
I don't know about all that. Those records are going to stand for a little while. That would be
probably. Yeah, probably. He would have had a chance.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. Those the roster that Travis Etienne had was miles better. He probably would not have gotten the same kind of Travis Etienne averaged almost 8 yards a carry on his career. I don't think Trevor is getting that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's not getting that anywhere, honestly.
Yeah, that's
good Lord. Travis Etienne, man. What a get for Clemson, dude.
Yep.
A last minute, spur of the moment, just Hail Mary get for Clemson. Yep. Turned into the greatest running back that's ever donned a Clemson uniform. It's crazy. Crazy to think about.
Like Mike asked, any targets in the portal y'all really like as someone who could do well at Clemson? I think the linebacker from Arkansas could be a good target. Like Mike, that's something that I'll probably spend some time during the week to really dig into. I don't really have a short list right now of guys, but I think that's something that we could definitely discuss on the next show.
And I think linebackers one of those positions that Clemson may go after, and they may not, depending on if Barrett Carter comes back. Clemson's linebacker room may be okay. Because Clemson did take one of their numbers away from the linebacker room, so they are carrying one less linebacker. If you looked at Clemson defense so far this season, They kind of played with kind of a 2 linebacker system. So they kind of play with a 4-2-5 type deal this season. Does that continue? And if it does, maybe they don't need quite as much depth along the linebacker position. I don't know.
We'll see.
Just a couple thoughts that I had about it, but
And
that could be obviously a position of concern. Defensive end is obviously a position of concern. Offensive line is a position of concern, and then maybe even wide receiver. Who knows? We'll see
we'll
if
see.
we'll see
Yeah,
if Bo Collins is the last wide receiver to leave.
right.
You
Yeah,
never know.
and that's the thing that's tough. It's hard to say like what should Clemson go after because we still
Right.
are having
Yeah.
incomplete information on who's staying, who's leaving. On
Yeah.
the linebacker thing, I also think you mentioned Barrett Carter potentially coming back. That could be something that changes the calculus a little bit. And also, do you land another linebacker in this recruiting class? You're still going after Bradley
There you
Shaw,
go.
four-star
Absolutely.
linebacker Bradley Shaw. So
Yeah.
and you're in. I think Clemson's in good position right now. So
Yeah.
that could, if you land his commitment, that definitely changes the numbers. You have 2 linebackers in the class now.
Yeah. You got Drew Wood
I'm sorry,
coming
I'm
in.
sorry, 3. Yeah, you have 2 now, and you would have 3 if you were to add Bradley Shaw. So
Yeah.
That would definitely change the numbers a little bit. So we'll see.
Yep. So.
People talking about Cam Coleman.
What about Cam Coleman?
Yeah, I don't have any. I don't have any insider knowledge. I don't think that's a realistic possibility, but I'm
maybe.
In
You
this
never know.
You
never know.
A lot of the I do think he's a potential. I think there's a good chance he doesn't stick with Texas A&M. But it seems like a lot of people are pointing at Auburn right now.
That'd be crazy if we landed him in the
that would be a hell
minute.
of a flip. Yeah.
Holy crap, that would be a last minute get for the Clemson Tigers, dude.
Yeah.
Holy moly, man.
Yeah.
You imagine bringing in Wesco, TJ Moore, and Cam Coleman?
Yeah. Probably the best wide receiver class.
Good Lord, dude. That would be an insane wide receiver class right there.
Yeah.
Holy moly, man. I'm not saying we'll do it at all or it's even a possibility, but if Clemson pulls that off,
just watching his recruitment, he's seen. I don't know if that's the kind of I don't want to get too much into NIL and stuff, but that's definitely played a part in his recruitment, and I'm not sure
Clemson's not going to do it.
It would take Cam would have to really just want to come to Clemson. I think because I wouldn't expect Clemson to be a team that outbid somebody to get him.
Well, yeah, Clemson's already Clemson's one of those teams that have made it clear they're not getting into bidding wars with other teams.
Right.
They will compensate their players with NIL, but they're not bidding against other teams. That's kind of the approach that Clemson has made to NIL. I think people on the Clemson roster are heavily compensated when it comes to NIL. Clemson has 2 big, NIL, collectives that, compensate athletes really well, but they're not going to get into bidding wars. So if Cam Coleman is looking for Clemson to outbid somebody for him, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Brandon says Cam Coleman had no interest in Clemson. That's not true. I do think he was looking for other things. But he did come to the official visit weekend in June. He was one of the guys that was that they were seriously considering, and there was some mutual interest there. But I wouldn't say he had no interest in Clemson. I think that might be too much to. It's and it's worth a shot to circle back around on him. But
yeah, of course, why not?
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, I think that would be a.
that would
be crazy, but
Cam Coleman was a guy that Clemson was willing to oversign for. So he's definitely a guy that's worth circling back around for. But if he's looking for Clemson to outbid somebody,
Yeah.
it's 100% not happening.
Yeah.
Clemson's not going to bid against other schools just based off NIL to get you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to want to come to Clemson, and then they will compensate you after that.
Right. I think Auburn is probably in the best shape right now.
Yeah. But it would be a crazy recruiting class if they landed it.
Let's see. Brandon says Cam might be a bust. If Ohio State didn't offer him, then something is fishy. Brian Hartline is a wide receiver girl. He sent. I don't
agree with that.
Yeah, no, that doesn't. No, Cam Coleman is an elite football player.
He's the real deal, man.
I don't look at. It's like, oh, if you don't have an Ohio, if your delineation for who's a good wide receiver and who's not is whether Ohio State offered them. You'll probably guys with an Ohio State offer, there's probably a reason to think that they would probably be pretty good. But even if they don't, I mean, there's a multitude of. Ohio State doesn't offer every elite wide receiver in the country. Like they're not. Honestly, Clemson doesn't offer a ton of guys, and obviously they're like probably the lowest as far as total number of offers among
for sure.
Big
schools. Clemson's always the lowest amongst big schools.
But no, I don't. I think that's a silly line of reasoning to say that if Ohio State didn't offer you, you're not any good, because there's probably a multitude of examples of 5-star guys that did not get Ohio State offers. And a lot of times, and maybe Ohio State didn't offer a kid because they've sent out the total number of offers that they've wanted to, and they're not going to offer any more kids because they want, they have their list of guys that they're interested in. Yeah, so absolutely. I mean that doesn't really track for me. I think Cam Coleman is a really, really good football player, but I could be wrong. You could be. No 5-star. There are no guarantees in the recruiting industry. There's
never a guarantee, man. When you're moving up in the level of football, whether it be from high school to college or from college to the NFL, there's no guarantees, man. There are plenty of elite college football players that went to the NFL and were bust. Just like there were plenty of elite high school players that went to college and were a bust. There's no guarantees, but 5-star is about as big of a guarantee as you can get. I think he'll be a good college football player, but who knows? Anyone could be a bust in college football, obviously.
You also got to think. Cam Coleman is from Alabama. Ohio State isn't. Ohio State doesn't always choose. They pick their battles when it comes to those kind of recruits. Like in deep in SEC country, like they'll go and get kids, but they're not just offering everybody.
No, because they're not going to get them most of the time. Most Southern kids they don't want to go up there and play college football in the frozen North. There's a lot of players that don't want to go up there for a myriad of different reasons.
Yeah, and it's also another thing where it's like, maybe Cam didn't show interest.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Cam wasn't interested. Sometimes you don't offer a kid simply because he doesn't, he doesn't seem to be that interested, and it's kind of a waste of time to really pursue that.
You're right.
So let's see. I'm looking at the top wide. I'm just trying to see who of the top wide receivers in this class who has an Ohio State offer. Brian Wesco does not have an Ohio State offer.
He's gonna be a bust.
So no. I guess you got to change your. I guess you got to change your opinion. Unless you already thought Brian Wesco wasn't any good.
Brian Wesco's gonna be a bust. He's a Texas guy.
It's a 5-star receiver right there. Let me see. Does
TJ Moore have a Ohio State offer?
I don't believe he does.
We got 2 busts on the roster coming. Goodness, what are we gonna do?
Ryan Wingo is the number 2 wide receiver in the country. He does not have an Ohio State offer. Although I do have my reservations about Ryan Wingo in particular. Let's see. No, Mike Matthews did have one. What about okay, let me find TJ.
What about TJ Moore?
See. Bama offer.
Yeah, what? Big Mick says
he did have an Ohio State offer.
Oh, so TJ Moore's gonna be a good wide receiver then.
Yeah. So TJ's better than
better than Brian Wesco.
Um,
even though
I mean, hey, that might actually end up being true. We'll see.
It could be. It could be true for sure. Wouldn't surprise me.
Let me see. Did Perry Thompson get an Ohio State offer? He's currently committed to Auburn.
Hey, Big Mick says Cade, a bust from Texas. So
I'm not ready. Well, that's yet to be determined. But Perry Thompson does not have a Ohio State offer. Another Alabama wide receiver, by the way.
Oh man.
So
Ohio State don't recruit Alabama wide receivers, huh?
I mean, there's a reason you pick your battles in the state of Alabama, because a lot of them do end up going to one of the in-state schools.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. Clemson stole a few good ones from Alabama, but those weren't easy steals from the state of Alabama.
Yeah, just take
West Coast. Yeah, take it away, man. Take it away. Yeah, he obviously don't deserve to come to Clemson. Ohio State didn't recruit him.
Yep. We can keep TJ, but no. Sorry, Bryant.
Hey, if Dabo ever starts basing his recruiting off of Ohio State, I'm out. We're going to change the name from the All In Show. I can tell you that. I don't know what we'll change it to, but it won't be the All In Show anymore.
Yeah. Of course, Pal 79. He says Tyler Grisham keeps letting us down. None of these guys are offered by Ohio State. I agree, man. Like we just need to.
Man. What
we
are
just
we
got to follow
doing,
the Ohio State offers, and if they get an offer, we need to offer. That's
Was Hunter Renfrow?
I can't get them all.
Was Hunter Renfrow recruited by Ohio State? Because
I'd have to look, but my gut feeling says that he probably wasn't.
I mean, he caught a pass to win the national championship, so they probably recruited him. So
yeah, that's a good point. Point.
Yeah, they know everything. So I'm just kidding. We're gonna stop trolling here.
We spent enough time on that, and we're giving you a hard time, Brandon.
It
was just
hey, shout out to Brandon. Hopefully we didn't hurt your feelings. Thank you for commenting, man. We really do appreciate it. We're just trolling you, man. We got a lot of hate for Ohio State here, so just stirs up some bad feelings.
Okay, Club Nick Enthusiast hits us with a 31-0. Yep.
Oh.
If Mark is listening, he probably won't appreciate that. But
back when Clemson was elite. Clemson was elite.
Good times. That was a fun night.
Yeah, that was a great night. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Ohio State was favored in that game.
I hate Ohio State.
2.5.
Ohio State is one of the teams that I hate the most, behind South Carolina, North Carolina State, and then Ohio State probably. Ohio State may be before North Carolina State, honestly, for me. I hate Ohio State.
Yeah, man, it's right up there too.
I can't stand them, dude.
And it's not even really the school. It's just some of the fan base can be pretty elitist, and
they're so obnoxious and elitist.
It's like they're entitled to win every football game.
Oh my god! And they got every excuse when they lose.
Yeah,
it's just so infuriating when they lose a game. They can never just be like, oh, we weren't the better team. Like most Ohio State fans, not all of them, okay? Not all Ohio State fans, but a lot of Ohio State fans, when they lose, they just have the most excuses of any fan base I've ever seen. It's ridiculous. So But anyway, we'll get off of that. Tiger T says, "What do y'all think of Emac's tweet?" I don't know. What did Emac tweet, Jordan?
Yeah, I just saw it and I went to look and he tweeted out a two mind blown emojis, a smirk emoji and a tiger emoji.
What the hell does that
So
mean?
this was 52 minutes ago. So I this could mean a number of things. I'm not one to I'm not going to speculate. It could be on maybe he has some idea of who the next offensive line coach is. Maybe it's a recruiting thing. Who
Is
knows?
he is Emac the next offensive line coach?
I don't think so. That would
No,
be.
he's not. He's not. I'm just joking. He's not. He's
Could
not.
you
I'm just joking.
imagine?
I'm just joking.
We just hyped him up. I just went on here and hyped up the offensive line hire, and then turns out we hired Eric Mack. And listen, I love Emac, but I think
love
he's
Emac,
still a
but
little
he's
too.
not. He's not the next offensive line coach.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely not.
That would not go over well.
No,
Even, he's loved by the fan base, but that would be. He needs. No. I love. He's just fine where he is on ACC Network.
Yeah, no, I love him, dude. And then him and he does the Graham Lincoln Matt Clay podcast over here on YouTube. So y'all check that out. Shout out to them. Hopefully one day we will be as good and as big as them. But
and we're working our way up.
we're getting there. We're just the little guys. We're just the little guys over here. We're just the wee little Clemson fans over here. But no, I don't think he's the Clemson.
Oh man,
the next Clemson.
I didn't know the K Club enthusiast. He says Clemson fan born in South Carolina, now living in Columbus for the past 11 years.
Ugh.
More than you will ever. Man, you are in the weeds.
Oh man, dude, I'm so sorry.
God.
I'm so sorry, dude. I thought I was bad because I had family members that I grew up with that were Ohio State fans. Like to the point that they would buy me Ohio State jerseys for Christmas every year. It was ridiculous, dude. I hated it. I hate them. I hate the fan base. I hate the team. I hate everything about Ohio State. But K Klubnik enthusiast, he just beat me out, dude.
Like, yeah,
I thought I had the most hate for Ohio State, but no, he won. He's got it. He's got it. I'm so sorry, man. He's absolutely in the trenches, man. This dude is out here fighting the good fight every single day. Shout out to him, man.
Man, bless you, brother. That's all I can say. Bless you.
Yeah, bro. Shout out to you, man. Keep fighting the good fight. Screw the Buckeyes, dude. They suck. They suck.
The Hard Take says, I watch you guys, not that small. I tune in from Ireland. Yeah. And we appreciate you. And that reminds me because you were having issues sending super chats.
Look at us, Jordan. We went international, man.
I know.
We got Ireland up in here.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Hard Take.
It's pretty cool. But I know he was having issues. I think it was him. He was having issues sending super chats.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Yeah. I still haven't figured out like what the issue is there, because I've seen other. I've tried to look. I've looked it up, and I haven't really. I mean, I'm not really sure why you aren't able to. There doesn't seem to be anything about your location that should matter. Like I've seen other streamers and the like get the YouTube automatically does the conversion, I think, or at least it should, but I don't know.
He said currency conversion.
Yeah,
maybe that's it. I don't know.
I don't know. 63-17. I love that username. I was very young when that game happened, but I like referencing it anyway. Thank you for the $5.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you supporting the show. Shout out to you.
He didn't send a. I think he didn't send a. I think that's a super chat, not a super sticker. So I think I'll. No, maybe he didn't intend to send a message, but I'll put up his next one anyway. He says the Luck Eyes have explosive diarrhea.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do, sir. Yes, they do. Hate the Yuck Eyes, man. Good thing Mark isn't on this little live stream because he'd
we
be.
don't hold on. Don't speak too soon. We've got a decent number of people in here. He might be one.
He'd be super upset. He'd be super upset that we're talking about the Buckeyes like we are.
I think we'll end it off on this since we've been going on for so long. Oh well, actually, Hardtake was able to send a super sticker, so that's
hey,
cool.
Shout out Hardtake, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Go and put that up. So thank you for the super sticker.
Thank you, brother.
I don't know why you were having issues, but hey, glad it worked, man. And seriously, we thank you for. I mean, you don't have to do that. So we greatly appreciate anything you donate. So
thank you for supporting the show, man. You've been one of the ones since like Jump Street for me and Jordan. So
he's been
appreciate you getting in here and supporting the channel, man. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And then back to this one. Big Mick asked about AJ Ricker, TCU's offensive line coach. He was he's a guy that I might get a look. I know Garrett Riley was interested in bringing him over when he initially took the job, and that that was just something that Dabo was. He was like, Dabo was not willing to do. So I don't know. That could be something interesting. He's been there.
Are there any other like big name offensive line coaches out there?
There are a few
that you could see Clemson targeting.
There are a few, and I think people are underestimating who Clemson might have the pull to get. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that much. Some people are thinking of a little more outside of the box names and some more obscure names.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this: I think Clemson has more pull than you're giving them credit for. And I think there are guys on the board that are of a higher profile than AJ Ricker. I'll say that.
Okay, there you go.
But yeah, AJ Ricker, I think that would be an interesting one, and he obviously has a previous relationship with Garrett Riley, and they're close. So I think he's a guy that could get a look. Oh, Hardtake says it was me. The card was my UK business card, and he switched to a US account. So it's a.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking. I was like, there shouldn't be an issue. Just your location shouldn't be an issue.
Right. So, yeah.
It must have been.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The base of your bank account. Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. That does make sense. You want to get out of here, Jordan?
Yeah, I think it's about time.
It's been 2.5 hours, man. What an amazing show tonight. We still have 52 people in here right now. Shout out to every one of you. Shout out to the support that you give me and Jordan Bowman. There's been multiple super chats tonight. Thank you so much to Drew G, Jamarius Payne, John Serrain, 63217, and the Hardtake so much for supporting our channel in the way that you guys did. We really do appreciate it. It's truly amazing every time we pop on here and you guys support us in the way that you do. It means a ton to me. It means a ton to Jordan. We're just a bunch of regular dudes that get on here and talk Clemson football. And it's truly humbling to see the amount of people that get on here and support us. So thank you guys so much. We will be on here next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. for another episode of the All In Show. We are quickly approaching the 50th episode of the All In Show. So, maybe we'll do something special for the 50th episode. We'll see. Me and Jordan will talk about it. But thank you guys so much for your support and you guys showing up. I hope you guys stick with me and Jordan throughout the off season. We will continue this show every week throughout the off season. But until then, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. Until next Thursday, go Tigers.
Later, y'all.